Hello listeners, Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are tuned to the Nighttime Podcast, focused on the fringe of Canada.
So Aaron, it's been a few days since we digested the first part of this story. Have you cheated and kind of read ahead online? Like, do you know what's about to happen in this story?
No, I'm keeping this pretty pure because I want to react in real time. As the details come out through the episode, I want to be able to have a genuine reaction to it.
Yeah. Good. No, it's a cool way to, like, because the interview that we're hearing, like, I was there, I did the interview and stuff, so it's weird for me to talk about an interview I've done, but it's makes it really cool to get your reaction and kind of bounce it off you as we go. So First thing we'll do, we'll just kind of get caught up with where we were. So when we left off with Cortney's mom, Lisa, at the end of the first episode, is basically we talked right through to the point of Cortney's disappearance. So we heard about her upbringing, her troubled relationships, first with the father of her young son, Jason Pike. Then we heard about her very troubled relationship with Philip Smith. She started dating another guy, but what happened was when Philip Smith got out of prison for that 2-day sentence for his attack against her, that same day she seemed to have simply disappeared after going for swimming lessons with her son and her ex, Jason Pike, who had been interested in rekindling their romance at that point. So that's where we left off. The very last moments was when Lisa, Cortney's mom, called Cortney at home at around 7 or 7:30 and said, I'm going to bring you some food home. Cortney was excited about it. Lisa came home and Cortney wasn't there, and from there she went on to file the missing persons report. So,
and we were kind of looking at the three gentlemen as the possible suspects.
Exactly, yeah. Which of these three guys may have had some involvement in it? And we did hear Cortney's mom, Lisa, who her belief at that point was that the father of Cortney's son, Jason Pike, was involved. And so the next step in this, and I explained this at the end of the last episode, is we're going to learn a lot more about Cortney's activities on that last day, her last known day, specifically her activities that evening. So what we heard and what we know about it so far was that Jason Pike picked her up early in the afternoon. Jason, her, and their young son Oliver went to swimming lessons. Jason dropped her off. Lisa called around 7:30. When she got home later that night, Cortney wasn't there. The police investigation quickly turned to CCTV footage. And they even, like, this case very early on was big news around Newfoundland. So people were encouraged to check CCTV footage, whether they had cameras at their home or on their cars or whatnot. So again, as this footage began to surface, we began to get a clearer picture of Cortney's activity. The first thing that surfaced was video from an Esso gas station that was shot on June 7th at about 3:07 in the afternoon. So this would have been, I believe, right after the swimming lessons. There's not really much to say about this video other than to confirm Cortney seemed fine at that point. She basically walks up to the counter, makes a purchase, and walks away. So no one else is in the video with her, so it doesn't really tell us anything. It's just the first glimpse the public really got of Cortney that day. But the next piece of footage is really going to get the ball rolling on the investigation. So again, Lisa spoke to Cortney around 7:30 and was going to come back home shortly after with food. We have a piece of video that surfaced at 7:52 that shows Cortney walking down her street after leaving her home. I asked Lisa about this video, where it came from, what it shows, and what her thoughts were. And that's the first clip we'll hear of from my talk with Lisa. And there's a piece of footage of Cortney just like walking down a street. What is the story with that piece of video?
That was the very first image they released of her, the first still image. That was leaving my house and walking up the road.
Would this be her on the way to swimming, or her after swimming on her way to...
Her after swimming.
All right. So at the first video of her of her walking down the street, can you just tell me what you know about that video? Like, where did it, or that image, like, where did it come from?
Like I said, my house is my street is a one-way street. You come in like, don't know, you're probably 3 car lengths, and then you have to turn, come down around the street. But when you make the turn, the house right there on that corner, before you make the turn, has video surveillance. Mm-hmm. And then when the investigative team put out the call for video surveillance, that was the first one they got.
And they found, and it's Cortney just alone walking down the street?
Yes, it's Cortney headed toward Ruth Avenue, I will say, which is the busy street.
So as we just hear, this clip, it's not going to blow the case open or anything. It basically just gives a direction Cortney was walking and shows that, she was alive and well at 7:52-ish, leaving her home on her own accord, just like a regular person walking down the street.
Yeah, and this is, 20 minutes after she spoke with her mom on the phone?
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think that maybe she was just going out for a quick trip somewhere, because she would have been expecting to see her mom not long after.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't imagine you'd leave the house at that point if your mother calls and is like, "Hey, I'm going to be home soon. I'm going to bring food." She's excited about it. Like, what would draw her out of the house at that point in time to walk down the street alone?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, more footage is going to come through that is really going to give a picture of what was happening. And again, it's hard to explain this far after the fact, but this case was the type of story where everybody was talking about this. So presumably police were getting more information than the public was aware of. And some of that information would lead to investigators speaking to Lisa and breaking some bad news to her. So I'm going to first get to this clip of Lisa talking about the very unfortunate news she got from investigators about 20 days after Cortney's disappearance, and then we'll kind of back up into what information led them to do this. Okay.
Cortney left here on June 7th. June the 27th, a police officer, like the investigative team, 10:02, my phone rang on a Wednesday night, and he said, "Oh, hi, Lisa, are you in bed?" And I said, "No." He said, "We need to talk to you." I said, "Okay, do you want to drop by tomorrow, or I'll drop down tomorrow?" "We need to talk now," he says. I said, "You got her, don't you?" "Nope." I said, "Okay, come on by." So anyway, I phoned my sister Donna in Glendon, got him to be here. There's only 3 of us. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he came in, the lead investigator, and he sat by me. He just had this look of, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." And 4 members of his team with him. Mm-hmm. He took one of my hand in his. Oh, Jesus. And he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, your daughter's been murdered." And my mouth just dropped. And now between me and you, right to that second, from the day Cortney went missing, I blamed Jason Pike for her disappearance. So that's immediately what I said to the investigator. I said, "It was Jason Pike, right?" And he shook his head. He said, "No, it wasn't." Because this whole 20 days or 19 days, I was saying to him, "I know it's Jason Pike." And he said, "No, Lisa, it's not Jason." I said, "Well, who is it?" And then I was afraid he was going to tell me some name that I've never heard tell of in the world. Mm-hmm. And he said it was a person, he said, known to her. He said that had court orders, stay away from her. I said, Philip Smith? Yes, he said. And I said, I'm going to get at him. Well, he said, we really can't tell you the name, but he said, you're right. But he said, he's going to be in court 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I said, I will be there. So anyway, he said, my family didn't want me to go down. I said, oh, yes, I'm seeing him tomorrow morning. So anyway, it was only myself and Danny went down, and then the judge and the court clerk. And when the two sheriff's officers walked in with Philip, and he eyed me there, I put my glasses up on top of my head, and I just gave him a look. And Danny still says, if that look could have cut him into pieces, he'd be up to insurance. And then he got the sheriff's officers to kind of shield him from me. And I give Danny a big poke. I said, move over. And I just glowered my eyes at him. And he almost said, thank you, Judge, when the judge said, you're out of here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And every court appearance after, he did it by video link.
So that happened fast. But let's keep in mind that at this point, the police haven't specifically, well, the RNC haven't specifically told Lisa that they believe Philip did it. They just kind of allowed her to, get that information out of
They let her jump to that conclusion herself, kind of thing.
Yeah, but he's not been charged. That court appearance she referred to that she went to like the next day, he was actually arrested for breaching the conditions of the release earlier in the month, like the 20 days prior. Because remember, he got out after a 2-day sentence or whatever. That got out the day she disappeared. Some of the conditions that he had was that he wouldn't break any laws and that he wouldn't go anywhere alcohol was served. But I believe the reason they arrested him for that court appearance she attended was he was caught driving his truck without a license, and he was at a bar or somewhere that alcohol was served, and that was enough for them to take him back in.
Right.
So that's what we just heard. So he wasn't charged with her murder at this point, but
they were probably looking for a reason to get him in.
That's what I'm thinking. And as far as why, we'll go back to and what they know that we're going to learn now. We'll go back to the call out they made through the press and everywhere else asking people for video surveillance. A piece of video came in from the evening of her disappearance that has to be the most fortunate piece of video for Cortney and her family, the most unfortunate piece of video for Philip Smith. It's a video that was filmed shortly after that 7:52 clip of her leaving her home. It was in. I'll let Lisa explain the video because it's quite amazing that this exists.
Yeah.
Well, the investigative team, the one that we had, the first still image from the neighbors just up there on the corner, the first one that they had was at 7:54 p.m. And then we were lucky enough to get a video from a Metrobus camera here, and that picks up directly across the road. She's walking across. She has to cross Ruth Avenue in Mount Pearl. You can see where the truck. She's walking in Michener Avenue. So he comes behind her and picks her up. When she gets in the truck, he does a very swift U-turn, and off they go.
And now initially, at least publicly, this truck wasn't specifically said to be Philip's, but it had unique characteristics. So can you tell me what about the vehicle in the video led you to know that it was Philip Smith's truck?
Well, first of all, I had his license plate number. I've always had that for safety reasons, for finding Cortney and whatnot. Well, I couldn't see the license plate number on that, but what I could see was he had the symbol, the Browning symbol, I think it's called. I thought it was some kind of a snake, but it is of a wolf or deer or something. I'm not sure. He had that on the right back window, and that's what everybody noticed on the video.
So it had the symbol, and Philip had the same.
Philip had the same symbol, yeah.
So if you didn't catch that, a bus dash cam filmed. It just so happened that the bus caught Cortney walking down the street as a truck pulls up next to her. She hops in. The truck does a U-turn and just takes off. And you don't get like I've watched the video a number of times, but you don't get a look at who's driving. But as you heard Lisa describe, there's some characteristics of the truck that really are unmistakable. Like say like a truck that has like a pickup truck. There's like the back mirror, or not the back mirror. Sorry, the back window.
The back window. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a big kind of like sticker decal sort of thing. She said the company Browning. I don't know the symbol. It's kind of like a moose head or something. But anyway, it's not like a tiny little sticker. It took up like a quarter of that back window, and it's as clear as day as in the footage. And it also I think there was like a broken light or some other feature of the truck that just made it unmistakable that it was.
Yeah, and I'm sure she's familiar enough with that vehicle to be able to catch it right away.
Yeah.
All the dealings that she's had with him. Like she said, she even had his license plate number written down or memorized or whatever because of the numerous situations and circumstances she's had with this individual.
Oh yeah, she was all over him, and like she must have just had the intuition from early on to know that there was big problems, and although Cortney didn't seem to stay far away from him, Lisa was she was right there to make it difficult for Philip to get at her, which is great.
And so how did they know to check this bus cam? Like I imagine they would have had to gone through hours and hours of bus cam footage did they just say, hey, let's pull the bus cams from this point in time to this point in time and see if we can find anything?
That'd be my guess, but think at the same time is that first clip they have from the neighbor's house at 7:52, they would know the direction she was going. So if the police investigators contacted the bus to find out which bus routes would run, which buses and which routes would have been in that area, you would have just like a couple hours that you have to look at, and you'd be able to narrow it down to a few buses. Like I think they could figure that out pretty quick. I just wouldn't have thought that buses had cameras like looking out of the bus. I would have assumed there was cameras like looking at the driver.
Maybe like looking in the bus, or like at the passengers or whatever.
Yeah,
but I guess maybe it's to have any kind of documented video evidence of any
car accident or something.
Car accidents or maybe if they're in an investigation of some kind into a situation on a bus, maybe they want to see that angle as well. I don't know.
Or maybe just there could be a billion reasons, but I guess it's fortunate because with a bus and the way they're timed and their routes are organized, you can really figure out which bus would be where at roughly what time. So you could pretty quickly put it together. But it's just fortunate that video happened to catch the moment that Philip pulled over and she hopped in. And if you watch the video, it's so short. Like you see him pull over and she kind of speeds up her walk and hops in the truck and he does a U-turn, and it's like it's that quick. So it's But if they didn't have that, it would be very hard to connect him, because this is going to be the one thing that really gets the attention put towards Philip, and it's already it's not looking good, because he got out for sharing intimate photos and beating her up. He got out of jail for that this morning, like the morning that this happened.
Yeah, And that's why I always found it weird that the mother, always suspected the father of her child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First, when to me, logically, Philip is the one that I would gravitate towards. Or even the new guy, because that would be the person that she would most likely be with.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, the father of the child. Like, that's...
Yeah.
I can't see why she had such a fixation on him in the early stages, when Philip seems like the obvious choice.
So remember now that when the police went to Lisa's home and said, we believe Cortney's dead, and she kind of got out of them that they thought Philip did it, Philip was arrested for breaching those conditions, and he was in custody. So investigators had him right where they wanted him, and he's, as you can imagine, he's being shown this video and being grilled about what went on after that U-turn, and where the heck Cortney is. Do you remember what he said, like what his version of the story was about what happened that night?
Well, apparently Tom Moore, the lead investigator, had gone over that with him, because when he was first arrested and he admitted to it, Tom said, "Okay, where'd you take her?" Because that's what we had talked about. I said, "Now, Tom, if you dropped her off to the mall, somebody would have to see her. If you dropped her off out on the highway, it'd have to be a car passer and she'd try to flag him down. Or if you dropped her off at Tim Hortons, somebody got to have seen her." So anyway, he didn't tell me what places now he said, but he told them one place, and Tom Warren, lead investigator, went back to him and he said, "Philip, your story is not making off." And Philip got all strapless and right confused, and he said, "I was under so much stress." He said, "But I don't know what I was saying." He said, "I told you I dropped her out here, right?" And Tom Warren said, "No, that's not what you told me." "Yeah, that's where I dropped her off." He said. So Tom Warren went back again. Come back again. He said, "Philip, you got me on a wild goose chase." And Philip said, no, man. He said, "I'm telling you, I dropped her off there." And the investigator said, "But that's not what you told us yesterday." Mm-hmm. "But that's where." So they went the third time, and then they said, "Shag, we're not going nowhere else." Just 3 places didn't pan out, neither one of them where he said he dropped her off. Right?
So I can kind of picture the way that would go down. I that it would be a pretty frustrating interview for, the interrogator to be like, we got you, and you're just not going to tell us. Like, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, just to straight up not cooperate at all, or like, maybe he's trying to figure out if I can send them one way, maybe it'll buy me time to piece a story together, to figure this out, to figure some way out of this. Maybe he's buying time at this point.
Just grasping for branches.
Yeah, like, I took her over there. Then they're like, "Well, that's not what you told us yesterday." And he's like, "Well,
yeah. Well, we did. We did the episode with the Big Ben's murder and the Mr. Big sting. Mm-hmm. That's what it kind of reminds me of. In that story, they had the guy. They filmed him admitting to the murder to an undercover cop, and then the next day when they presented him to the video, they're like, "Do you remember, talking to a guy?" Yeah. And he's like, "I don't remember that."
Yeah.
But it's almost pointless at this point. Philip, if he wants to get out of this and get them off his back, and if he didn't do it, then he has to tell them now what the hell is going on. And it sounds like he's not doing that.
Yeah, it sounds like not everything is adding up here with his story.
Yeah. So obviously he's going to be their main focus, the investigators. They're going to be all over him, but they have him in custody for breaching the conditions earlier, but they're not able to hold him indefinitely. They're holding him, I believe it was initially going to be for 90 days that he was held for those offenses. And again, at this point, he still hasn't been charged with murder or anything related to Cortney's disappearance. And things are really going to get interesting when he gets released. So he's in for 90 days. He actually gets out a little bit earlier than planned. Lisa, Cortney's mom, at this point, I'm sure she's convinced he did it, as are many other people. And Philip's basically free to go to continue to live. So I asked Lisa, what was life like at this point, living in the same community with this guy as you're actively, on the hunt for your daughter?
He was supposed to get out on September the 4th. He got out 16 days early because of good behavior.
Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus is right.
So from when he was released in August, did you have any contact with him or see him around town or anything at all?
I had seen him because I used to drive around his house probably 5 or 6 times a day. I mean, I never had any condition to stay away from him. I wasn't actually hunting him or nothing like that, but that's what I was trying to do in a legal way. I was trying to drive him out of his head, to be honest with you.
And he just went about life, I guess, as seemingly as normal for this period?
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild to imagine this going on. He's sweating this whole thing, and then he has the mother just stalking him the entire time.
Yeah,
she's all over him. Like she said there 5 or 6 times a day she was driving by his house. I'm sure he saw almost everyone, because if he did it, he knows they're onto him. Like, he must be peeking out the windows. I'm sure of it.
Oh, constantly, like, oh, here she comes again and again and again, like just sweating the entire time.
It's like, what's that? There's I don't know if it's Poe, but there's like an old story about like the beating heart under the floorboards. The telltale heart.
Telltale heart.
Yeah, that's what he's got going on. I'm sure he is a wreck with panic, and she is, feeling probably something very similar. She just wants to know what the hell happened to her daughter, and if she's alive, and and you would want.
Yeah, she's a very intense woman to begin with, so to get on her bad side, especially to be involved in the disappearance or murder of her daughter, is going to definitely turn the dial up on things for sure.
Talking about the dial being turned up and Philip being paranoid and kind of backed into a corner, the next thing we're going to get to is maybe the climax of that. And the next thing we're going to get to is going to make this case way, way more difficult to solve.
So anyway, Colin, my son, had just gotten home from Iqaluit. He's welding in gold mine up there, Halloween night. So anyway, we were off late, and so anyway, quarter date that morning of November the 1st, the big rampage just knocked on the door. And we got a little dog that started to go mad, and Colin's in bed, him and his girlfriend. Mother, who's that? And I was trying to get my feet to the floor when it knocked again. And I said, you son of a bitch, you ever I'm going to kill me for banging like that. And when I come down, even before I opened the door, I could see Tom's face through the glass. And I knew. I said, it's something. And I opened the door. I said, you got her? No, he said, we got to talk. And like even that, the way he talked to me was different. And I said, what? So anyway, he said, Philip Smith Philip Smith is dead. I said, I fucking told you, didn't I? But you couldn't keep him detained because of what I said. I said, sometimes you have to listen to people when they know things are going to happen. So anyway, yes, Lisa, he said, we know you warned us about it. But he said, like I talked to you and you agreed and said that we couldn't arrest him on circumstantial evidence and then him get away with it on a technicality. I said, no, that's exactly what I didn't want. So anyway, he said, we're on the way to the scene now. I said, where's the scene? And Tom kind of giggled, knowing me. He said, Lisa, I'm not telling you where the scene is, because he said, if I do, you'll be there before I am. But anyway, his father has a cabin out in Bellevue Beach. Do you know where that is?
No, I don't know the area.
Yeah, just going out the highway. I'd say 40 minutes out past St. John's. And like it's a little community, but there's a campground there too and cabins. So anyway, he phoned his mom and dad at 7 o'clock that evening and said he didn't want to live anymore. He hung himself, and they never found him until 7 in the morning. I don't know.
Now, aside from Philip, are you aware at this point of any other suspects in Cortney's death, with the exception of the people who maybe were assisting Philip?
No. He was the only suspect. He was the only person of interest, yeah.
So this piece of news really changes things. He took the coward's way out of what was coming to him, I think.
Right. It certainly, points things in his direction even further.
Yeah.
Because obviously he was dealing with the guilt of this murder.
With the walls closing in around him.
Yeah, and realizing the only way out is to kill himself.
That seems to be it, but he didn't leave a note behind. Like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, the least he could have done was left a note behind and maybe said where she is and what happened, but not even like that didn't even happen.
He took everything with him.
He took
everything he knows.
Yeah, he took the answers to the grave. Yeah. So she's where we are now. Like, we'll get to it, but he's never been charged with her murder. Police have said, he's dead, but he's our only suspect. Mm-hmm. He's the last person that she was with. And remember as well, like after she disappeared, he was online saying he believed that her new boyfriend killed her. So right. He was trying to, get the target off him. I think, like in my mind, and I'm sure in most people who are following this story's mind, there's no question that Philip Smith murdered Cortney that night and hid her somewhere as a way to prevent himself from being caught for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the big thing, like kind of the big question that comes out of this, in a story like this where she's missing, she's said to be murdered, but it hasn't been proven and they haven't found her, is like, how do you find closure? Like, how does a family kind of move on? And, they've been, there's been so many searches trying to find her body. I asked Lisa, what is closure in a case like this? And now what are you hoping for, or what do you hope happens next, or what will be closure for you? Like, what is the best case scenario? Or to
find her. Yeah. She has to be brought home, as I say in every public speech. She deserves the dignity to be brought home. She deserves the dignity of a burial. Yeah. No, I was going to say no young girl. Not my daughter deserves this. She deserves better than this.
That was pretty tough to hear.
Yeah, well, when you have this traumatic experience just kind of looming out there, like you don't have that body, you don't have that closure. It just kind of stays with you and it haunts you and it drags you down, and it's awful to hear about.
I think, like, I'm surprised at how, like, given how horrific and just devastating this all is, I'm surprised she's even able to to talk about it. Like, she had she broke down a little bit there, and it'll happen again as we go further into the interview with her. But up until this point, she's described like an absolute nightmare, and just
Oh,
like in
yeah,
plain
like a
in
horror
plain
story.
English. I'm shocked that she was able to do it. As I was talking to her, I was just blown away that at her composure and just ability to recount the facts. And
Yeah, she seems super strong, like to
yeah,
be able to do that.
but at the same time, I think she's probably driven by the fact that the better job she does of getting the story out there, the more likely, it's going to kind of
Someone's gonna
shake the cobwebs and knock
yeah.
some stuff out, as well as simply gain supporters. Like if 20,000 people find out about this story, there's going to be 500 of them that are going to be really swayed by it, and to the point that they're going to try to help or do something. That's the way I think that's the way it would work anyway, and maybe that's her motivation. But either way, it's horrific and painful and tragic. But there's another part of it that, for me, I don't know why, but this next piece really sticks to me. And so, again, I don't think there's any doubt that Philip killed her daughter. You heard her hint when she described how she found out that he killed himself. She told the police officer, like, I told you, I knew it. And they said, yeah, you warned us. What she was talking about is she knew Philip Smith to be suicidal. In fact, before he killed Cortney, she, Lisa Lake, Cortney's mom, actually saved his life from a suicide attempt a couple months before he probably killed her daughter. And that is, it's just unimaginable.
I told the police, I told everybody that I knew. Within 1 month after Philip got out of jail, he was going to commit suicide.
Wow.
You can ask anybody that knows me. And I knew it. He phoned me here one night in April. And I said, Philip, where are you to? Hated his guts, but had to tolerate him for Courtney. Mm-hmm. I said, Philip, where are you? And this was the first time she was gone to St. Lawrence to be with Ryan. And I said, Philip, where are you? At the airport, he said. And I said, what's wrong with your voice? Oh, I just called Mother now. My sister said, told him I loved them. I said, Philip, don't be so foolish, boy. I said, where are you? He said, I'm at the airport now. I laid down the phone and I looked at Danny and I said, come on. He said, where are we going? I said, but we got to go to the airport. So I phoned Samantha, his sister, and told her to call that I had just got. So she went to his house, and so she went in there that night. That truck was backed up right in the center of that house, so you couldn't see her from the road. He had taken the exhaust from his clothes dryer. He had one end of it taped to his exhaust in his truck, and another end taped going into the window of the truck. And by the time Samantha got to him, he spent, I think, 72 hours in the hyperbaric chamber at Health Science.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's another time I says, if I hadn't have made that call, I'd have Courtney now.
So that must be tough to live with. She did the right thing by saving him, but like in hindsight.
Well, in the moment, yeah, you're like, well, I gotta go save this guy's life. But then when you look back at it, and you're like, if I had just ignored him at that time, then yeah, he should still have her daughter.
It strikes me as like there's so many just little things in the story, like the bus managing to catch that little clip that would lead to Philip being involved, and this is just another one where it's just this kind of sort of coincidental thing where, like how much the world would have changed for her had she had not like answered the phone or something that day. But that just must be so hard to live with.
You also have to try and not dwell on those things either. You can't. Everything in hindsight is what it is, but to dwell on your decision making at the time, not knowing what's going to happen in the future, like that'll keep you up at night, and you got to try and block that out. You can't beat yourself up over decisions like that.
Yeah. I think it's the reason maybe it's affecting me so much or sticking with me is I'm the type that forever worries about things I have no control over or past decisions that are kind of sometimes even inconsequential. So this is the piece that, like, this would be something that would just be a knife in my back. But I'm sure.
Oh, it would eat away at me too. Because I'm the same way. I would sit there and dwell on it over and over again. But being a strong individual to be able to block that out and not beat yourself up over it. That's the trick.
So now to start wrapping this up, the way I see it is at this point, Philip's dead. The Canadian justice system, had he been, say, put to trial and convicted, or if he confessed or something, there's no way he would have got the death penalty. It doesn't exist in Canada. So a part of me is like, his punishment is kind of the best result, where it's wiped him off the face of the earth and he'll never do something like this again.
Yeah. At the same time, though, it seemed like he wanted to kill himself anyway.
Yeah, so he's getting out of it.
Yeah, so the suicide is not so much a straight up admission of guilt anymore. It's like he obviously already wanted to kill himself before he murdered anybody. So, like, when I first heard that he killed himself, I'm like, well, obviously he did it, But then now you're like, oh, well, he was already suicidal before all of this happened.
Yeah, interesting way to look at it. I never considered that, but I think the evidence is there. Oh,
he clearly did it. Yeah.
I'm the type where knowing that she got into his car that night and he tried to hide it, that's enough for me. That I'm like, either he did it or he was very closely involved to it being done.
Yeah, if he didn't do it, he would have had no reason to change his story and lie and all of this. And he would have been like, well, I was with her, but I dropped her off here and I never saw her again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I guess the question is, I asked Lisa as I was winding it down, is I asked her if she felt in any way that any kind of justice was served where Philip's not with us. I knew her answer wasn't going to be like, yes, this was justice, but I kind of wanted to see how she would tackle kind of the topic of justice, given this unusual and kind of anticlimactic end to, her quest for justice, basically. So where we're on the topic of Philip's passing, where he did it to himself and he's dead now. Do you feel any sense of justice with the end as it is now?
I feel justice was cheated. Like, I can honestly not say a bad word about our police here. They did what they could and what they had. Like Tom Warren, the lead investigator, he has since been transferred to Labrador West. He came to see me the day before he flew out. He stood off in my living room, and Danny is here, and he can tell you. And he broke his heart crying, and as he hugged me, I'm gonna cry now. He said, "Lisa, I feel I let you down so bad." And I said, "Tom, you didn't let me down." And he didn't. No, we have nothing but the highest respect for Tom and his staff. Yeah.
So as it stands now, we're basically at the end of the interview and the end of the storytelling here, but it's really like there's still this massive loose end being Cortney still hasn't been found. She's somewhere, like, it happened fast, whatever happened, because they have Philip's activity, I think, like, it picks up like the next morning that they locate him. So it's not like, Newfoundland, it's not the kind of place where you could go 2 states or 2 provinces over and do something. Like, it's of course it's surrounded.
It's big.
Yeah, it's big.
It's large.
It's large. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of forest.
And surrounded by water.
Yeah. So, but it's like I just feel like I'm surprised that something hasn't been found that would either lead to Cortney or maybe at least point in a direction, but it really hasn't, and not due to lack of searching. I mentioned it already earlier in the episode, is there's been a ton of searches organized by friends of Cortney, family members, or just community members who tried to pitch in and help. There's a massive online community. There's a Facebook group called Help Us Find Cortney that has, I don't even know how many, maybe like 20,000 people or something. And they're this is this massive group rallying around Lisa and Cortney's friends that, since she disappeared, they've been trying to connect the dots and, do whatever they can to keep Cortney's name and face out there and, keep people interested. But at this point, there's still no answer. And as far as what exactly happened and where she is, we've heard Lisa say, she wants a burial and to bring Cortney home.
Yeah, she deserves that, and that's
absolutely. And then it's also like you can't forget the fact that she has a young son who's now growing up kind of in the shadow of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horrible story, one of the worst I can imagine.
Yeah, it leaves the family in limbo, and it's just an awful situation.
I think I had mentioned this as well, as the idea that if 20,000 people listen to this, there's going to be a small percentage that really want to get involved and do something about it. The last thing I asked Lisa before we wrapped it up was for people who want to help or get involved in some way, what can we do to support her? And she had a few ideas, but ultimately this pretty hard to listen to some of this. So now for those of like people like myself or just random people that either aren't in Newfoundland or aren't connected to the case, what can we do to help you and your family find Cortney and find justice? Like, what would you like people to do to support you?
Say prayers. Keep her in your mind. Keep her in your heart. Pay attention to the news, and if people around you seem strange or, they hold on to every word somebody says, You don't know. They may be revealing something that you're not expecting. So that's about it.
And now, I know it's going to be impossible to sum this up, but can you try to tell me what the world has lost by not having Cortney in it, and what impact her death or her murder has on you and her loved ones and her community?
Well, I'm left without the only daughter I had. My mother's left without her first granddaughter. My sisters are left without their first niece. More importantly in all, her 7-year-old son is left without his mommy. And her extended family, relatives, cousins. Cortney was she was liked by everybody. She had this smile, and if somebody said they were going to do something, oh no, I'll do that for you. You don't have to do that. Like she was right there to jump in and help or help somebody, help anybody to do anything, to straighten their lives out, or she would do without it herself if it would help somebody else.
I want to thank you for joining Aaron and I for the conclusion of our talk surrounding the disappearance and murder of Cortney Lake. I've heard from many listeners that have been moved by Cortney's story and by her mother Lisa's search for her daughter's remains. I hope that Cortney and Lisa have found new advocates and supporters among the listeners of Nighttime. To show your support and stay up to date with the case, I suggest joining the Help Find Cortney Facebook group. I've added links in the show notes that'll help get you there. As well, if anyone listening has information that could help find Cortney, please contact the RNC at 709-729-8000. And with that, we'll end this episode of Nighttime. But before we part, I'm gonna give some thanks. First, a huge thank you to Lisa Lake for taking the time to share her family's heartbreaking story with us. Next, I want to give a big thank you to Monty Data for providing the musical theme for this episode. It's called Noir. And lastly, but most importantly, a huge thank you to all the listeners of Nighttime. Without you, Nighttime would have seen the light of day many moons ago. That said, if you want to help keep the lights off here at Nighttime, let me suggest the premium feed. For about the price of a cup of coffee, you can access a separate feed in which the episodes are posted a bit earlier than in the free feed, and are done so without paid advertising. But simply beyond the regular episode, the premium feed also includes additional content that'll help you dig a bit deeper into the rabbit hole. You can access the Nighttime Premium feed at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And with that said, let me thank the newest members of the supporter group. Melissa and Mary, thank you for your generous support. For anyone else out there who'd like to support the show but can't do it financially, you can give me a big hand by simply telling your friends about me and leaving a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whichever equivalent you're using. If you want to stay up to date with my activities on or off the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I use the handle @NighttimePod. And if you have any story ideas or would like to give feedback on the show, contact me at nighttimepodcast@gmail.com. Now until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte. Copyright Jordan Bonaparte.
Listeners, while you wait for the next episode of Nighttime, let me recommend another podcast to check out. My pal Reese has a great show called Canadian Politics is Boring. If you want to hear some unexpectedly wild stories from Canadian political history, Canadian Politics is Boring is the show for you.
Hi, I am Reese, and I am from the podcast Canadian Politics is Boring, and we have 60 seconds to hard sell you why you should listen to our comedy show. So, Jesse, have you got any reasons why they should check us out?
Absolutely not, but you told me to be more enthusiastic, so that's what I'm going to be.
It's got stories about funny politics in Canada.
Bear wrestling, aliens, alcoholics galore, seances with ghosts, dogs that are your mother, or the fact that Justin Trudeau's father might actually be Fidel Castro, or
not.
So are you driving to work, or are you on your bicycle listening to a podcast, or are you perhaps taking care of your children and you just really want to drown them out? Put us in your ear holes.
Search Canadian Politics is Boring on your favorite podcast app, or go to CanadianPoliticsIsBoring.com to check out our half-finished website.